Because then you'd be one of those individuals when Imam al-Sadiq told him, go jump in the fire, he jumped in the fire as a test. You'll do it because right now some people are like, oh, I'm not jumping in no fire. Because the love isn't there, is it? You maybe adore them, but you don't really, really love them. In the name of God, the Beneficent, the Merciful, it's a pleasure to be here back again in the wonderful community here in Birmingham. May Allah bless the organizers and the people who are working hard behind the scenes to make this community and this organization worthy to present a gift for Sahib al-Zaman of the efforts and the hard work that are people putting in to show true servitude of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim wassalam. And today's topic, they actually requested for us to talk about a topic that's so important, especially in this time period of what's happening in the Middle East. Of course, you know the atrocities that's happening over there and all the killings. And the HYs, they're already doing a lot of work behind the scenes, raising money for Lebanon, for those who want to take part in raising funds, donating, helping our dear brothers and sisters over there in the Middle East. Please speak to one of the committee members and they're more than welcome to help you in aiding our brothers and sisters in need. And as we can see, the situation around the world is getting worse and worse, and the signs that occur before the reappearance of our awaited Savior are becoming more and more apparent. And the topic that was given to me to discuss was preparing for Imam Mehdi Ajala Faraj Sharif. Now, when somebody is asked to give a topic about Sahib al-Zaman, a topic so big, preparing for the awaited Savior, it's not easy to just cram it into one lecture. So what I decided to do is, I decided to discuss about how we can prepare the foundation in our hearts, and then later on we can use this foundation to build on preparing for Imam al-Mahdi. If I come to you now and I say to you, let's all just read Dua al-Ahad every day, let's do some tasbih, let's do some dhikr, maybe we can do Dua al-Faraj, and we'll just think about him from time to time. We can do this, and we're not saying that this is necessarily a bad thing. However, what will happen is, if we give these simple statements of do this, do that, do this, do that, and you go home and you take it away, what will happen is you will do it for a few days, but then after that it will kind of die down, and there is no more emphasis on wanting to continue to do these acts. Why? It's like building a structure, building an actual building. If we look at this Husayniyah here, before you start building upwards, you have to look downwards. You have to look into the infrastructure, dig down, see if there's some rocks, something that needs to be removed. So then when we place this cement, when we put the metal pillars, they are founded correctly. That way, once the foundation is solid, we can start building upwards and developing the building as it is today. You don't start working from the top and then work your way down, because eventually the building will collapse. It's the same thing if you prepare for Imam al-Mahdi. If we say do this, do that, and off you go, eventually the theme of preparation for the Imam will go. And we have to ask ourselves a question. Imam al-Mahdi has been waiting since the Shahada of Imam al-Askari. So that's when he entered the occultation. At the beginning it was minor occultation, then it went into major occultation. If you combine minor and major occultation, how many years has he been waiting for? So from the age of 5 onwards, and of course he's still alive now. How many years? It has been 1,186 years. 1186. And ideally everyone at home should put this number in their house somewhere, and then every year after the Shahada of Imam Askari, you change the number and add a year, add a year, add a year. Maybe put that number in a place where you do something that isn't as religious, maybe like you're just watching television. Put that number above it, so then that's a reminder to yourself that, hang on, maybe I shouldn't be watching too much television, maybe I should be preparing more for the Imam, because it's been over 1,000 years. That number is equivalent to 16 average lifetimes. 16 times the Imams lived, still waiting. And we must ask ourselves this question. If we are of the type where we just do dhikr of Ahlul Bayt and call it a day, what will happen is that generation will then become, number 16, it will move to number 17. 17 to 18, 18 to 19, and there is no actual active intizar, which is active preparation for the Imam. Why? Because the foundation still hasn't been built. If the foundation is built in our hearts, then you will not just recite dua and do some a'mal and then call it a day after a week or two. No, every day you will be infatuated with your Imam until the day you die, or until the Imam reappears, and it might be in your lifetime, and then you continue to do your khidmah for the Imam until you die. That's how it works. We must ask ourselves, why has it been so long? We have to ask ourselves and also believe in our hearts, could we be the generation that actually brings him out of occultation? As we see in our books like Kamal al-Din and Tamam al-Ni'mah, Kitab al-Ghayba, some of the famous books relating to Imam al-Mehdi, there is a key emphasis on how the mindset should be when it comes to Sahib al-Zaman. And if you think in the mindset of he will reappear, the mindset and the subconscious will think that it's not really related to me, so then I won't put as much effort in. These books emphasize that there should always be a harara, like a fire in your heart, that he will come soon, so I need to be actively preparing quickly. So the mind should be always thinking, oh, it's going to happen in my lifetime right now. Imam's going to come soon, right now, so I need to do something. If you say he's going to come back in 1,000 years, what happens? You take it easy, it's not really got to do with me, so I'll kind of put my foot off the pedal and we'll take it easy. No, these books say that you need to change the mindset, that is going to happen very, very soon. So what is this foundation are we talking about? What do we mean by building a foundation in our hearts to develop? And what is this foundation related to persistency in a'mal? And surprisingly, or not surprisingly, depending on the way that you think about it, all of it actually relates to our tawheedi belief, our belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and how much we actually believe in Allah, and then that tawheed links into imamah. So we'll start off with tawheed and we'll link it to imamah. Now, when we say that we are servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we are worshippers, or whatever the phrase you want to use, we are trying to do things in relating to Allah because Allah deserves to be worshipped. But what if we say, do we truly love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the way that He is meant to be loved? If we think about the word love and how we've applied it into a day and age society, how does that love differ from the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and should there be even a difference? I'll give you an example. Of the gentleman here, mashallah, beautiful young gentleman, and maybe some of them not as young. If you love a girl or a woman that you want to get married to, what happens to you? Or if the ladies that are listening, if you fall in love with a man that you have spoken to the parents and you're getting to know them and it's all through halal basis, inshallah, what happens to the heart? And rather, what happens to the mind? All day, you're just thinking about that person. And I'm not talking about, oh, I've seen her for the first time, that's it, I've fallen in love. No. This is lust, habibi. Don't be tricked that this is love. This is just a superficial appearance that you're attracted to and off you go. No, we're talking about actual love where you're constantly thinking about the person in the correct way. If your mind is constantly thinking about this person, what happens to your sleep? It's reduced, isn't it? Because your mind's racing, thinking about this individual. Also, what happens to the amount of food that you eat? You eat less because your stomach is filled with butterflies, it's squished a bit. So then you feel like, oh, I don't want to eat. Your heart's racing. You don't want to eat as much. Your sleep and food are compromised. These are some of the signs of a person that has fallen in love with an individual. Now, if we really ask ourselves this question, do we have the same feelings for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the same way that we have a feeling for the creation? Because this is how we start to tap into the foundation. Do we think of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Do we yearn for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the same way that we yearn for this individual? And why don't we love Allah this way? Because we should be. So let's fix the problem together. Now, if you think about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and think about creation, the creation that you love, that you've fallen in love with, you love with them because of their personalities, isn't it? You love them because they're kind, they're generous, they're helpful, they want to be forgiving. You know, this person, naturally, the human being, their fitrah, their innate feelings and innate hearts, emotions are attracted towards well-being and goodness. So we are attracted to these kind of qualities. This is in relation to a person that's the creator, the creation. So what if we think about the creator and their characteristics? The 99 names with Allah makes it 100 names. It is the pure definition of kind, caring, forgiving, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, Al-Jabur, and it goes on and on to describe the characteristics of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we need to start falling in love with Allah because of the character of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let's tap into this a bit further. If we look at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala compared to our own mothers, our mothers would do anything for us. They would die for us. They would just want to make sure that we're okay. If we're ill, they'll stay up with us. If they look at us in distress, they want to talk to us. What if we say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves us so much more than our own mothers? Wouldn't you then start falling in love with Allah more than your own mother, more than the person that you've actually fallen in love with? We're building this bond slowly but surely because we've started to understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as not just an entity that you can't confine. Rather, it's a person. Well, not a person. It's a God that is always present, so close to you, and is ready to help you in whatever you need. And these are some of the names and characteristics that we mentioned. But if we look about how generous Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us to go to Jannah. That was the objective. It's just because mankind sinned, then where else are you going to put them? And that's why then hellfire was the place to go. But initially, the destiny is for all of us to go to Jannah. So if you think about it, Allah created you to do goodness, to then go to Jannah. Yet we use the material aspect of our bodies, which He created, to go against Him. And ajib. If you think about it, it's ajib. Allah created me and I use the things that He created me from to then go against Him. It's very strange. Mankind sometimes is very strange. But that's the reality of it. We have used our own bodies against the person that's created our own bodies. A very strange situation here. Yet He always wants to answer us and help us and whatever we need. Some might say though, hang on, okay, you're asking me to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but my life is so difficult. It is so miserable. I'm going through all sorts of hardships. This person has cancer. This person is, my work, I'm struggling, etc., etc. But if you think about it, that's true. In the Quran it says, we have created you in this earth and we will test you with trials. That is, in tribulations, 100% you're going to get tested, 100%. But if you compare how long these tests are and the intensity of these tests in comparison to what Jannah is, this is another problem, by the way. We've not really tapped into the details of what Jannah is like. Because if you look at how amazing Jannah is, you're going to know how trivial these issues are. So if you compare it, this average lifespan of 70, 80 years of trials and tribulations, which by the way, not all of it's trials and tribulations, some is trials and tribulations. And then you are granted paradise with such intensity of mahabbah and love and all, whatever you want, you are given. You will understand that this is nothing. They say the person, when on the day of judgment, he sees how much rewards he was given for one day of sickness on this earth, he would want to then return to earth and be sick for the rest of his life just because of how much reward he's seen from one day of illness. This is the kind of generosity we're dealing with. So how could you not love a person? And Allah can't just say, okay, you just go straight to Jannah, there's no trials and tribulations. That means the whole point is pointless. There's no reasoning behind the whole point of existence, and off you go. No, there's trials and tribulations, and you are granted so much reward. You can be in the presence with the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. There's so much blessings and barakah that Allah has given us both in this life, and the amount of mercy that He will show on the Day of Judgment we've not even tapped into 1% on this earth. So there's so much forgiveness and there's so much love. So this is how we start to develop our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we truly develop this relationship with God, we are able to then develop the relationship with our Imam. And we mentioned the amount of rahmah he shows on the Day of Judgment. They say on the Day of Judgment, when a person, say he was bad on this earth, and he is ordered, the malaika then order him to go into hell. This individual sometimes is walking towards hellfire and he constantly looks back. And he looks back again, but he's still walking. So then Allah orders the angels to stop him, and Allah says to this creation, why do you keep turning back? Why do you keep looking this way? And he says, it's because I heard of your mercy on earth, and I was hoping for it on the Day of Judgment. So then Allah says, bring this person away from hell, we'll bring him into heaven. Because that person had some form of expectation in the dunya, so that was his reward in the akhirah. This is the type of mercy and love and mahabbah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is the kind of thought process that we should think about when it comes to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then naturally, your heart will constantly start thinking about Allah. You just want to get closer to Him. Your foundations will start to develop. Because if you really found your heart with mahabbah, with ishq, with love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then your mindset will constantly be with them. You're constantly wanting to serve their cause. You constantly want to aid them, and it won't just die off after 2 or 3 weeks. The mindset will constantly be with the individual or the creator. Now, for us to enable ourselves to start develop our hearts, to make it easier for us to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I mean, looking at the characteristics of Allah is fantastic. But we have to also do other things to soften the heart to enable us to start loving Allah in a much easier way. And there are 2 main ways of doing this. And the first way is removing materialism from our hearts, and the other way is removing sin from our lives. These are the 2 main points when it comes to making it easier to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, if you think about it, how do we know how attached we are to materialistic items? And a good way to think about it is, when you're praying and your mind starts wandering off, which it happens, which we try and fight it as much as we can, the thing that your mind has wandered off to is the thing that you tend to be attached to. So if you're praying and you're concerned about your work, that's your materialistic issue. If you're a child and you're thinking about what game you're going to play when you go home, that is your materialistic attachment. If it might be a human being, it might be a car, it might be whatever it is, in salah it tends to reveal itself. And also outside salah, when your mind starts wandering off, it's the same thing. That is your Achilles heel, let's call it. That we need to cut it off from the roots. Cut it. Now sometimes, some people, they say, bit by bit, take it easy, No, this thing you need to cut it from the roots. Fight it as much as you can. Go face to face with it. Because once you cut the materialistic aspect from your life, it makes it easier to attain the spiritual wayfarer position in nearness to Allah. That's the thing that's holding you down. It's the dunya. So you need to really cut it. You really do. A lot of people, it's food, honestly, genuinely. We come sometimes to the mosque just because of the niyaz. That happens a lot. that also we need to cut it. And that's unfortunately in our culture and other cultures. The problem is the food. Genuinely, we don't address this enough. Food is a big deal, guys and ladies. We need to really address how much shahwa, how much desire we have for our food, because there's so many hadiths about food and how it affects the body and how it affects the soul. So let's revise this: the amount that we eat and the type of food. You know, if we look in the Khutbat al-Muttaqeen, the sermon of the pious, the description of food is meant to be simple and small. The pious people, their food is simple and small. That's it. That's it. That's it. Don't put too much thought into it. Don't go crazy with food. Take it easy. Maybe just take a step back, because we don't want to be of those who are materialistically attached to food. The other thing is we mentioned is what? We said two things. Materialistic. What was the other thing? Sinning. Excellent. Now people think it's impossible to not sin. People think that this matter is related to only the ma'sumin, the infallible. No. You can be a sinless person but not be infallible, because there's different levels of infallibility. The Ahlul Bayt are at the peak, but you can be a fallible human being where you've made mistakes, etc., but you don't sin. And there are people who here on earth right now that they don't sin. They just don't. Now that might seem crazy, because we've gotten ourselves into a habit of sinning, because you have the sins that are repetitive, and then you have the anomalies, the random sins. Okay, so if you go again head on into the repetitive ones, the anomalies tend to be a bit easier. Do you know the random sin that you do? That tends to be a bit easier to cut off compared to the repetitive one. And each of us know our own repetitive sin. You need to go head on. If you have a desire problem, get married. Oh no, but I have to wait until after university, I have to get a PhD in physics, then I have to buy a 5-bedroom detached house, and I'm expected to purchase an Aston Martin before I get married by the lady that I love. Is this really the lady that you love? They expect so much materialism from you. Do you really love this person? We have to revise the way we think, isn't it? Because if you really love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you really want to help your imam, it's all about tawheed. It's that core belief in God. Later comes imamah. You need to understand your loving relationship with God. Constant materialism is the issue. So if you're sinning constantly, that's your problem. You want to prepare for Imam Mehdi, that's your problem. Loads of the imams had the same issue. They didn't have their support. They didn't have groups of people are ready to do exactly what the imam said. Why? Because materialism or sin, they're not devoted. The same issue right now. So if you have a repetitive sin, you need to address this sin. When you go home, you write it down, you cut it out. Cut it. You do a mistake, cut it out again. Mistake again, you cut it. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will help you. And then this sin is eradicated. And don't think it's impossible. No. Then you move on to your random sins. You know, for example, somebody now and then looks at a lady. No, just lower your gaze. Oh, they do a mistake here and there. That tends to be easier. Just cut it off. Then you reach the level of a true lover of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You don't have materialism because you've cut it out. You're not so attached to getting this or getting that. You don't care about it. And you don't really sin anymore. And if you do, it's a mistake and you're not going to repeat it again. It's not constantly repetitive. This is some of the signs of the people who yearn for God. And the signs of the people who yearn for God, you see that on their faces, they are often tired and exhausted. Their day is a full-on war. Yet in the night, they are like monks praying to their Lord. Like lions during the day, and monks. And that's some of the description of the 313, which I don't want to get into. My topic today is the foundation. That's maybe a different topic, but it's the foundation we want to develop. But if you start doing these things, you'll find that everything else starts to fall in place. Because if you love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're going to want to just maybe slow down a bit in your salah, isn't it? You want to just speak to Allah a bit more. You want to just prostrate a bit longer. If you love Allah so much, then you're not going to want to carry on sinning. If you love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you don't want to look at this materialistic thing. You'd rather look at the Creator than the creation. And this is the way that an individual thinks if they are on the wayfaring path towards Allah. How does this all relate to Imam Al-Mahdi Ajal al-Faraj al-Sharif? All this understanding of loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, learning the names of Allah and the characteristics of God, knowing why our hearts have stopped because of our sins and the attachment to materialism, or so we want to break through them to get to God. So say we've got to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to an extent that is feasible in our limited capacity. How do we then link it to Imam? Well, the Imam is the creation that Allah has created to represent God in a similar manner of what exactly, similar manner as the Quran. The Quran constantly goes about how we should be, and that is the example of the Imam. The Imam is the representative of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but he's the creation. So he also is merciful, generous, kind, loves you more than your mother. But in this case you can add aspects of, because he's creation. He's like your brother. He's like your father. He's like a person that you are so dear to. And you actually find in certain du'as, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is used in not exactly the same, but in similar contexts where he's also your friend, a person that you can talk to. The Imam knows us so much that he's listening to everything that we are talking about now. The Imam is so close to us, is that he knows each and every single one of our ages, and he knows how we lived our lives. The report of what we did from weekly to weekly basis is there. If you mention his name, he comes and listens to you. And he is, when we say, by the way, do you know when they say, oh, they are like this, he is like the sun behind the cloud? You know, it's not just like a nice poem that somebody wrote. If you remove the sun, then existence is obliterated, isn't it? If you can't say it's a cloudy day, here, mashallah, it's always cloudy. If it's a cloudy day, and you just remove the sun, there is no more existence. We can't exist without the sun. It's the same thing when it comes to the identity of imamat. Without a representative of God, there cannot be the creation, because then the adala, the justice of God is compromised. Because then we can say to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment, He says to us, why did you sin? I said, we didn't have a guide. Simple. Allah is adil, He's just. He always has a representative there and present, and that's in our Shia Ithna Ashari madhab. There always has to be an Imam present, or before it was prophets. This is why he's the hujjah of God on earth. So when you start understanding the characteristics of God, and you look at the characteristics of the Imam, you understand that this Imam is so close to me, yet that I've not really developed my relationship with him. My relationship has been limited to, for example, Du'a al-Faraj, that I squeeze between the matam and the salah, because there's a few extra minutes before namaz. Let's just fill it in with Du'a al-Faraj, and then that's about it. We don't even know sometimes what the Du'a al-Faraj is even saying, because it's in a foreign language. So we really need to develop this foundation of love of the Imam for us then to prepare. Because if we start to love Imam Al-Mahdi in the correct format, then it becomes a lot easier for us then to start wanting to do the other things. Because there's a lot of things to do. There's a lot of work that needs to be done to bring Imam Mahdi out of occultation. So to develop yourself and to develop other people. So like we mentioned Du'a al-Ahd is the one that we just recited before we did this speech here. You can do Du'a al-Faraj. You have community building. Your headspace, which we'll speak about now, will change. And your work itself will become an entity of khidmah for Imam al-Mahdi. So your whole cycle of your day is khidmah of Imam al-Mahdi. How? Okay, so when you wake up, I'll give you a day's analogy of a Mahdawi, and then we can try and apply it to our lives. And you don't actually need to change much. I'm not saying go quit your job and just spend it on the prayer mat 24/7. No, Allah doesn't even ask you to do that. You wake up, what's the first thing you do? You think of Allah and you think of your Imam. Then you go and you get ready. You're getting ready because you're going to do something for the Imam. See, it's all about mindset, isn't it? Then you go to your job or go to school or go to university. Your work, you're attaining rizq, which is halal, to get this money to feed my family, who are all going to be companions of Imam Al-Mahdi, and raise them to become true Mahdawis. So the money that I'm using is to help my Imam, and also the job that I'm doing is a job that is going to help society to build the foundations for the Imam. And it could be any halal job. It's just the mindset that you need to change. You go home, and then you get home, you look after your family, spend a bit of time. This time that you spend with your family is for the Imam, because you're developing relationships. If we look at how you should split your time, there's a hadith from Imam Al-Kadhim. Part of it is spending time with good people, your family. This is also used for them. I'm not saying pray 24/7, but we're saying your mindset is 24/7 towards the Imam. So your activities are the same, but your thought process is different. One time, an individual actually met Imam Al-Mahdi. He went to Hajj 10 times, hoping to meet the Imam. And on the 10th time, he didn't meet the Imam. So then when the 11th time came, he's like, I'm not going to go. But then he had a dream of somebody saying, no, go. So he went, and then an individual said, follow me. And then he followed them, and then he eventually met, this is a very summarized story. He eventually met the Imam, and the Imam said something very interesting. He said, what has taken you so long to come and meet me? You know, so the guy naturally responded in his capacity of understanding. He said that, well, I went 10 times for Hajj, hoping to meet you. And he says, yes, but your mindset wasn't there. The mindset is on other things, isn't it? Yes, your intention with that period of time, maybe you want to go and visit the Imam, but the mindset's not there. Our mindset is somewhere else. It's constantly thinking about, I'll tell you, adults tends to be worry and stress over finance in general. If you're a university student or you're in school, it's either thinking about girls or girls thinking about boys, and it's about passing your exam. And when you're a child, you just want to play. In general, that tends to be a summary. That's the issue. But what if we say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already written for you your rizq? Allah doesn't want you to think about it. Just do your job, do as much as you can, leave it with God. See, we're lacking tawakkul. We're lacking just leaving it with God. We lack this, isn't it? Leave it with God. That's it, job done. Even if you're going to become the poorest individual, or you're going to become the richest individual, it's already written. Why are you thinking about it so much? This thinking is what's compromising you from getting to your Imam, because your headspace is just this. Work, finance, work, child, university, exam. Maybe I'll attend dua here, that's fine, but then it goes back to the exam. Or if you're younger, play a game, PlayStation, whatever it might be. Tends to be, or if you're retired, it tends to be, maybe family issues and family affairs. We're not saying don't care for your family. No, this is part of servitude, but do it for your Imam. Change the mindset for the Imam, and then you can start attaining the quality of Mahdawi. Because if you love somebody, you want to care for them. If you love somebody, you want to help them. Your whole day is infatuated with them. And this is the type of things that we want to do. That we want to really build this foundation to help the Imam. Now, if we think about it, if we actually manage to bring the Imam out of occultation during our lives, and this is the way you should be thinking about it. Don't think about it as some fairy tale that somebody wrote in a book a long time ago. No, you have to think about it as it's going to happen. If we change our lives in a way that is designed and catered for the Imam, and he reappears, then the justice that needs to happen for Imam al-Hussein will finally happen. Our main thing is Shia is Imam Hussein. I can literally see a Ya Hussein flag right in front of me. Our main thing is really Abu Abdullah because of the tragedies that occurred for Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Well, the person that will really solve it, is Imam Mehdi, because he will provide the justice to earth because of the injustice that's occurring at the moment, and he will provide equity as the world is filled with inequality. He'll provide the qualities, and everything will be sorted out through the Imam. So, to get to Allah, it's through the Imam al-Mahdi, and by getting to Imam al-Mahdi, you will truly avenge Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. So it's not merely just a 10-day Muharram or up to Arba'een And maybe even during that time period, the mindset isn't there. No, it's a 24/7, every day, every week, every month, every year mindset catered for the Imam. And that way we can elevate our status to aid him. And people say, what do you mean 24/7? Because a portion of my day is I'm sleeping. Well, because that's okay, just do your wudu before you sleep. You're doing ibadah there as well. Say, I'm doing this for Imam Al-Mahdi. I want to give all my reward to Imam Al-Mahdi. My 24/7 is for him. I love him. I'm infatuated with him. Everything that I do is for him. I only think about him. Be like this. Because then you'd be one of those individuals when Imam As-Sadiq told him, go jump in the fire, he jumped in the fire as a test. You'll do it because right now some people are like, oh, I'm not jumping in no fire. Because the love isn't there, is it? You maybe adore them, but you don't really, really love them. And these are the foundations. Love, from love, you can develop your heart, and that way you can attain the higher levels of spirituality. And of course, we conclude on this. This is the time period of, the wilad of Imam Al-Askari alayhi salam. Some might think that preparing the grounds for Imam Al-Mahdi happened after the martyrdom of Imam Al-Askari. No, it happened way before that. And one of the Imams that was actually preparing the grounds for the Imam was his own father and his grandfather. When they were relocated to Samarra, and because of the forces that they put them in prison for a very, very long period of their life, the Imams actually were preparing the Shia Ummah for the occultation period, because ghaiba means absence of the present Imam, although he is there. So it's almost like an in-between. So Imam Ali, a lot of the times he was there, and then it kind of, Imam Zain al-Abidin had to kind of push back a bit because of the current Abbasid and Umayyad state over there. Then you had Imam al-Baqir and Sadiq, and it slightly opened up a bit because there was a dispute between the Umayyads and the Abbasids. That's why lots of our hadiths are from Imam al-Baqir and Sadiq. Then it gradually built, and then a bit by bit, you notice that the trend kind of pulled away a bit. And then it went to like prison, you're not really seeing him as much. Maybe he writes a letter, minor occultation, you have 4 messengers, and then ghaiba. So Imam Al-Askari, with all his hardship and everything that he did, he was showing us the way that you are related to an Imam whilst they are kind of not present there. And we must adore, and whenever we go to Samarra, always when you go ziyarah, don't skip Samarra, go and send your salam to Imam Al-Askari and to Imam Al-Hadi and Sayyid al-Hakeem, Sayyid al-Narjis, the individuals that are present there. It is the place where Imam Al-Mahdi was born. And this is a key aspect of our lives. So let's read this short segment of Da'at Tawassul, asking Imam Al-Askari to help us on our journey of love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which will help us then understand our journey of love towards Imam Al-Mahdi Ajala Faraj Sharif. And then from this, we can then attain the higher qualities of spiritualities to then start preparing truly for Imam Al-Mahdi Ajala Faraj Sharif. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Ya Aba Muhammad, Ya Hasan ibn Ali, أيها الزكي العسكري، يا ابن رسول الله، يا حجة الله على خلقه، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله، وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا، يا وجيها عند الله، اشفع عند الله، يا وجيها عند الله، اشفع لنا عند يا الله يا الله يا الله. اللهم بحق المضطر أجب المضطر ونحن المضطرون يا الله. اللهم شافي كل مريض بحق مريض كربلاء زين العابدين. ورحم الله من قرأ سورة الفاتحة لكل المؤمنين والمؤمنات لا سيما أموات الحاضرين. تسبق الصلاة على محمد وآل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. صلوات.